Okay, great. I think we're ready to begin. So thank you all for coming today. This webinar is about succeeding in challenging customer scenarios. This is our last webinar for this year, and then we'll pick back up with webinars in January of 2020. If you'll be going to any library conferences this fall, I encourage you to stop by and say hi. I will be at the joint SELA Arkansas Library Conference, which is going to be September 27th through 29th in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'll be at the SELA table part of the time, but then I'm also presenting. And then I'll also be at NCLA conference, which is going to be October 16th through 18th in Winston-Salem. And again, if you're going to be there, I encourage you to stop by and say hi. We'll have SELA tables at both if you're interested in learning more about SELA too. Okay, so we have lots of participants. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. If you all will mute your mics for the presentation, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end, and you can unmute for that. If you have any questions during the presentation, please, I encourage you to type them into the chat box, and we can read those out, and the presenters can respond to those during the webinar if they want to address it then. Otherwise, we'll hold it till the end. This webinar had a little tiny bit of pre-work. There was a video to watch and then also a handout. If you did not get that, let me know in the chat box. I put the link to the handout in the chat box, but I can also shoot you the video if I need to. So these are our presenters for the webinar today. We have Tiffany Boeglen. She's an adult services librarian with 15 years of experience at Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. She's worked in the system for 15 years now and has worked in quite a few different positions. She began her career working in circulation while she was in library school, and then went on to work as a floating librarian for about 3 years. During that time, she worked in 20 of our 24 locations. She then found a position in one of the large, busy regional libraries where she worked with adult and teen services for about 9 years. In 2015, she moved to the main library location in Charlotte and has been serving library customers there in our reference department ever since. She says that she feels fortunate to have worked in so many different locations and was lucky enough to learn from lots of really amazing people who taught her a lot about what it means to provide good customer service. We also have Erin Yager, who's a senior library assistant here at the main library. She's been with Charlotte Mecklenburg Library for 7 years. She started in the system in 2007 as a part-time library aide. Within 3 months, she had moved into a full-time position, and she's been with a library ever since, with a few years away to finish school. Most of that time was spent working in circulation, but she also cross-trained in reference. And she's also worked in academic and special library collections. Erin's been teaching customer service classes in the library system for the last 10 years. She says, I know customer service might seem like a nerdy thing to enjoy, but I love helping our patrons and going the extra mile to ensure that they know we're here for them. Okay, you guys are good to go.
All right. Thank you. So this is Erin, and let's get started. Again, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for coming and joining us with this discussion today. We're going to talk about the importance of customer service, what customer service standards are and why they matter, and then we're going to discuss some self-awareness tips and what role self-awareness plays in how we interact with the customers. But following that, the bulk of the webinar is going to be spent talking about specific difficult customer interactions, because we all have those. And I want to give you guys some ideas about different ways that you can approach different situations in your own library settings. So, as we all know, working in libraries, no matter what kind they are, we wear a lot of hats, and there's no really set definition of what our job is. So one of the most important aspects of our job is how we provide services for our customers and how we interact with them. So I want to talk about what customer service is and how we can use our understanding of it to improve our interactions with our patrons. And this is just a good foundation for us to be prepared when dealing with difficult customer scenarios, because in my experience, a challenging interaction with a customer can sometimes be a little bit awkward and ruffle our feathers a bit. So first, before anything, I want to do a little role play. You guys don't have to interact with this, but Tiffany and I are going to pretend that we're a customer and a librarian. And this is just an example of what a good library customer service interaction is. So Tiffany, you ready?
Yes.
I love this. This is so cheesy. I love it.
It's
Okay,
totally
so
cheap. Yeah.
I'm the customer. So hi, I'm looking for a book.
Hey, welcome to the library. I'm totally happy to help you with that. What book are you looking for?
It's called 5 a.m.
Okay, let me check. So I'm looking in the catalog. Okay, I see the 5 a.m. Club, Owning Your Morning, Elevate Your Life by Robin Sharma. Is that the one you're looking for?
Yes.
Great. So we have several copies, but they're all currently checked out and there's a waiting list right now. We also have this book though as an ebook or as a downloadable audiobook if you're interested in either one of those. I'm happy to check on the availability.
Sure. I listen to audiobooks in the car, and I've actually got a business trip coming up.
Okay, so this book comes from one of our vendors called Overdrive. Have you ever downloaded audiobooks from Overdrive before?
No. Do I need to burn it to a CD or something?
No, actually, usually you'll download it to a mobile device like your phone, and then you can play it through the Bluetooth speakers in your car.
Okay. Yeah, I listen to music like that on my phone.
Okay, so the first step is to get the app for Overdrive on your phone. It's called Libby. It has a maroon color with a person reading a green book. It looks like you have an iPhone, so if you'll go ahead and access your app store and then search for Libby, you can download it to your device, and then you want to put your library card in.
Okay. So it's downloaded now. I've opened it up. I need to find my library. Oh, no, library card number. It says my library card number isn't recognized.
That's kind of odd. So let's go back for just a minute so I can check the library location. Okay, wait, I see the problem. We need to switch your location. You're currently down for Mecklenburg County Library in Virginia. You're going to need to delete that and try searching for Charlotte instead. Yep,
Mm,
that's the right one. Go ahead and enter your library card number and you should be good to go.
Okay. So how do I find the book?
Well, what you want to do is touch that magnifying glass up near the top and start typing in the title. And when you see the title pop up in the more options area, you can touch it again and select it. The audiobook version is going to have little earbuds on the icon. And what you want to do is touch place hold on that record, and then you're on the waiting list for it. And right here it says it should be about 5 days until you get it.
Okay, great. Thanks for helping me set this up.
You're so welcome, but come back in and give us a call anytime if you have trouble. And if you need more help, my coworker or if you need more suggestions, my coworker just put together a list of recommended audiobooks for car trips.
Awesome. All right. So I love doing that. It's really cheesy, but it gives for people working in the library, it's a scenario that offers a lot of opportunities for the librarian to provide good customer service. So what are some of the takeaways from that you got from this interaction? Like what are some ways that you guys saw that were good customer service? What Tiffany as the librarian did was Tiffany verified that title. She let the patron know, yes, okay, followed up with the patron, yes. So she followed up with the patron. She let them know that there was a wait list, but that there were alternative formats for the title. She exactly offered alternatives. She wanted to know if they were familiar with how to use Overdrive or Libby. She described exactly what the apps looked like, and because she happened to have the time, she was able to have the patron log in right there in front of her and walk them through that process of checking out. So that's an example of really good customer service, and that's awesome, but that isn't why we're here today. We're going to talk more about how to walk through more difficult situations. So just to follow up, customer service, let's go to the next slide. So customer service is the assistance and advice provided by a company to people who buy or use its products or services. And here at the library, that's people who are looking for information, that's people who are looking for materials, who are looking how to use our technology we offer. It could be anything. It could just be finding an article in a newspaper. They don't know how to find it. And our role is to make sure that we can gain their trust, that they know they can come to us. So we want to do more than just give them this information. We want to be able to go above and beyond. So the act of taking care of the customer's needs by providing and delivering professional, helpful, high quality service and assistance before, during, and after the customer's requirements are met. So we want to go above and beyond. We might not always be able to answer every patron's question or solve every problem that comes up in an interaction, but we want to make sure we thought thoughtfully and purposefully to give good customer service, to reassure our patrons that we are worthy of their trust when it comes to serve our services and that they should continue coming to us. So I want to just walk through the general standards for good customer service really quickly. So some of the general standards to consider when thinking about good service, it looks pretty simple and maybe even obvious. We want to greet all of our customers. We want to acknowledge that they're there. We want to smile and make eye contact, say hello. It's not just for when they enter the building. If they're entering your department, you want to let them know that you see them and that you're there for them. It's easy for us to get lost in our work and hide behind a monitor. We want to acknowledge customers that are waiting in line as well. Even if we are busy with one or two other customers, we just want to at least look at them in the eye and shake our head, say, hi, I see you. We want to follow common etiquette, say please and thank you. We want to make sure that they feel valued and show an interest in their needs. We need to be available. We need to minimize complex work at service desks. I know that's so hard for a lot of us to do. We've got a lot on our plates, but we need to attempt the best that we can to save that for off-desk time. If we look busy on service point, then the customer might avoid us because they don't want to think that they're interrupting us. One of my big things about being available is to actually walk the patrons over to what they're looking for. I think we take it for granted that we understand either the Library of Congress system or the Dewey Decimal System, and not everyone is, especially if it's their first or second time in the library. We really need to walk them over and explain how the system works. That way they don't feel intimidated by us. We want to keep our cell phone use to a minimum. And absolutely, when you're on a service point, I don't believe in using headphones on a service point. We need to be informed. We need to know what's going on in our branch and also in the community. At the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, we have a staff blog. On our website, we have our daily calendar. We need to be aware of what events are happening. We also need to be informed about any changes in the services that we provide, any kind of outside resources, any changes. It's up to us to be able to pass that information along. And at the end of the transactions, we need to follow up. We need to make sure that the customer feels that their needs have been met. And Tiffany says a lot. When she is ending a transaction, she says, do you feel good about that? Do you need more help? Because she's always happy to continue working with a patron until they 100% feel comfortable with what they've got. So we want to remind them that we're here for them and that we encourage them to just ask follow-up questions for, anything that they need, even if that means coming back 10 minutes later. So at the end, we want to thank them and make sure that they know they're welcome. So those are just the general standards for good customer service. Let's move forward from here. Hey, Tiffany, you want to work on self-awareness?
Yes, that sounds perfect to me. Okay, so before we move forward and dive into specific, challenging situations where we're dealing directly with customers, we wanted to stop and kind of touch on something that's pretty important, that's easy for us to sometimes not think about when we are considering how we serve our customers, and that's specifically self-awareness. We've been talking a lot about self-awareness in our library system, and we've been actively working to educate our frontline staff about what exactly it is and why it's so important. The added benefit is that it's useful both personally as well as professionally. So you can see the definitions here on the screen. Self-awareness is an awareness of one's own personality or individuality. It's also conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. So why does self-awareness matter in a professional setting, specifically, when we're looking at our customer service? And, our argument would be that it's important because when we truly understand ourselves, we're better able to be sensitive to our customers' feelings and their needs. So by being aware of what our own emotions and opinions are, we can better predict or anticipate, rather, how those emotions and opinions might impact our interactions with customers. This awareness allows us to take control also of those emotions and ultimately helps us, be able to be more effective, rather, in how we provide services for our customers. It's really important to be willing to be honest with yourself and ask yourself tough questions when it comes to exploring, your own individual self-awareness. It's extremely important to be aware of our biases and our unconscious stereotypes. Hopefully you guys all had a chance to watch the video that Kate sent out earlier this week. It's a really powerful video because it shows how the opinions we have, the ideas, beliefs that we have, whether we are aware of them or not, how it impacts the way that we walk through the world and how we interact with other people. And that's something that can and often does come out in our interactions with customers at service points. Simple questions like, what types of judgments do I make? Or what kind of situations make me feel uncomfortable? And how do I react in those circumstances? Okay, let's go ahead and switch over to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you. When we were doing some research about self-awareness, we came over the Johari window. There are essentially 4 selves. We all have 4 selves. This was created by 2 American psychologists in 1955, and the model basically breaks it down. We have our open self, where it's information we know about ourselves and other people know about it. We have the blind self, which is information about us that we don't know but others know. The hidden self, which is information about you that you know but others don't know. And then the unknown self, which is information about you that nobody knows about. So let's go ahead and click over to the next slide, Kate. So some people are more naturally self-aware than others. I'm going to tie in that previous slide here in just a second. If you're someone who maybe isn't as self-aware, or you aren't sure if you are, luckily, it's something you can explore and you can learn. You can really grow your self-awareness. You guys all should have received this attachment. Here you can see the handout, the self-awareness handout we put together. I wanted to take a quick moment to go over the handout just briefly with you. We don't have time to go over it in detail, but there's some solid approaches on here that can really help you hone your self-awareness skills. The first section here where it says self-evaluate, that outlines some helpful practices that promote productive self-reflection. And this in particular could help you better understand your open or your hidden self. The listed personality tests, those are fun, but they also will give you more insight into your traits and tendencies, and that could maybe perhaps shed some light on your unknown self. But I think for me, probably the most helpful recommendation on this whole sheet is to have candid conversations with friends, family, and coworkers. I'm going to be honest with you. This can be incredibly difficult because if you're doing it right, you're allowing yourself to be really vulnerable. On the back of the handout, which Kate, if you can switch to the next slide. Okay, on the back of that handout, you can see a list of sample questions that we recommend. So if you're truly open to it, you might be surprised by some of the feedback you get. We all have the perspective of ourselves. Well, and then we have our perspective of what we think other people's perspectives of us are. What we think they see when they look at us. And then there's their actual perspective. And most of the time, none of those are the same. So, an activity going through and like this and having, a candid conversation with someone that you trust, It can maybe highlight some information about your blind self, maybe some stuff that definitely stuff you're not aware of, but this other person can highlight for you, especially a coworker, because when you're at the desk and you're interacting with customers, I mean, we notice things about each other, and sometimes I'm positive that sometimes there are things that we are personally unaware of that we do. I would say when choosing to have these conversations, whether you do it for personal or professional reasons, that I really recommend you kind of have like an early conversation with the person that you're choosing, and tell them that you're asking for honest feedback and constructive criticism, but you want to do it in a safe way. I mean, because again, if you're doing it right, you're going to be vulnerable, and they may have some difficult things to tell you. So, being mindful and compassionate toward one another when you're sharing that feedback is a really important thing to ask, before you go into those conversations. It can definitely be scary to put yourself out there, but I promise you, it's very enlightening and it's helpful, and I think it's a really positive experience. That's been my experience with it anyway. So, we are going to look now at 4 unique challenging scenarios where we're dealing with customers. And when we're talking about these, try and think about how maybe self-awareness could be useful in interacting with these customers, because these are going to be challenging interactions. So it's safe to expect some sort of conflict or maybe even aggression in some form. So, for example, understanding how you handle conflict is going to be pretty important, because however you do handle conflict is going to color the interaction you have with the customer, whether it's for good or for bad.
Mm. Yeah, especially I think, Tiffany, you and we have a lot of discussions about self-awareness, and I think that really has shaped how we interact with our patrons with compassion a whole lot, especially in a bunch of these challenging situations. So from here on, the bulk of the rest of this seminar is going to be just talking about challenging situations, and I encourage you to really interact with us, to talk with us via your microphones, or you can type in the group chat, because not all of our library systems are alike. I know about half of everyone attending today is in academic libraries. Personally, we are here in a public library, and we've got some academic libraries as well. So all of our situations are going to be a little bit different, and I really would like the input from all the different types of situations. There is no one particular right way to do this, so I think we can all learn a lot from each other. So we're going to go to the first challenging scenario, and it's called the busy desk. You're working at a service point by yourself. A customer asks for help scanning and emailing their resume. Then the phone begins to ring, and another customer approaches the desk. What do you do? And so for a second, I would like for each of you to think about, what do you do when you find yourself in this situation? What type of library are you in? Tiffany, Kate, and I work in a larger public library, and so we're able to have backup, and we're not often alone. We want to, so just for a starting point, prioritization is really important with this. We need to be mindful of what's going on. We need to know, if people are waiting, have they been acknowledged? Are they on the phone, or are they there in person? And how long have they been waiting? So for main library, in Charlotte Mecklenburg libraries, customers who are in the library absolutely take precedence over the customers who call in. We should always help the customer who's directly in front of us first. So let's say that I'm on the phone with a customer, and a new customer walks up to the desk and politely waits for me to acknowledge them. I'm going to nod and say, hello, and I'll be with you in a second. If the transaction can be wrapped up on the phone quickly, maybe a minute or less, I'm 100% comfortable completing the phone conversation. But anything longer than that, I'm going to ask the person on the phone to either hold so I can assist the patron, or I'm going to ask them if I can just get their name and phone number and give them a call back. I just had to do that earlier this morning. I'll say something along the lines of, I'm going to need you to put you on hold while I help a couple people who have just walked up. Or, I'm really sorry, but I've had a few people approach the desk and I'm here by myself. I'm going to need to take your number and call you back while once I have coworkers available to assist me. Thanks for your patience, and I really apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you so much for understanding. What are some other ways in your library that you handle a situation like this, when all of a sudden it just gets to be too much? And Kate and Tiffany, I also encourage you to participate in this as well.
Yeah, this is Kate. I'm interested to know if anyone's actually been in this situation recently.
Yes. Yes. Just this morning. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else, but Erin and I had talked about this before. I waited tables all through, college and grad school. And so I kind of always really liked a chaotic environment. But, when you're in a library setting, it's a little bit different. So we're very fortunate because we have desk mates that we can learn to dance really well with and people that we can call to help us. But when you're by yourself, this can be incredibly challenging because you're going to have to probably ask somebody to wait.
I think a lot of this is also falls in line with the self-awareness bit. When I was much younger, one of my first jobs, I was a barista in a coffee shop, and I would stress out when we would get our morning rush. And I hated that people had to wait so long while I would make drinks. And then one day I just realized that it's okay for people to wait. They're there because they want the help from you and they trust us and they know that we are busy helping other people. And so it's okay for people to wait just as long as we acknowledge them and say, hi, I'm really busy right now. I will be with you as fast as I can, and just say, would you like to sit at a table while I'm finishing this transaction, and I can come to you. Sometimes that might be a little bit awkward, but if they see that you're busy and they know that, I think people are generally a lot more patient than we sometimes give them credit for, especially if we're stressed ourselves. So what does this say? I would get very nervous when there is a line. Everyone's so accustomed to instant gratification that I feel bad making them wait.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And it's okay for them to wait. So again, self-awareness. If you know that you get stressed out in that, take some time to stop and think, why am I getting stressed? And, what can I do when this happens? Absolutely. Most people are okay with that. So I don't think that this is a bad thing. It is difficult if you have to walk away and help scanning someone. I know that we don't have control over where our photocopiers and where the computers are, but I try to make sure that I can stay within eyesight of where my desk is so that I can say, hey, I'll be with you just in a second. I'm helping someone.
Yeah, this is Kate. I try to be really upfront about what's going on and exactly how I'm going to help them. So I always have someone on hold on the phone and then another customer approaches the desk. So I usually ask them what I can help them with and then say, I'll be able to help you with that in just a minute. Let me give this person on the phone the information they requested. Which computer are you on? I'll be there in just a minute. I just need to finish with this phone call.
Yep.
I think just like, this is Tiffany, I think it's like Erin said, it's just about learning how to really prioritize too, like what things can you knock out quickly, even if somebody comes in behind somebody else, but their question is, where's the bathroom, instead of making them wait, 10 minutes for that. So, and that's where I think that we can teach one another, especially people who are really seasoned at working busy desks. I've learned a lot from staff members who have developed really solid positive habits and navigating, all the different things that are coming at them from the floor during rushes, which we definitely get.
All right.
Oh, and I just wanted to add, join our library, the person who said they get nervous when there's a line. So I always I that happens to me too. So I always make eye contact with the person in the line and say, I'll be right with you. And then that helps me like not worry so much about them waiting, if that makes sense.
I think it calms people down too, to know that they have, I mean, I know when I'm in a place and I'm waiting for somebody to get to me, if they at least acknowledge me, I feel better about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less frustrated because I know they've at least seen me. They've acknowledged that I'm standing there. So I think that's a really good point, Kate.
All right, let's go to the next situation.
Is that me?
Yep. That's you.
That's me. Okay, so this is probably a really fun scenario that we've all, at some point, had the pleasure of experiencing, the unproductive interaction. You know, so you have a customer that you've helped many times before come to the desk and they ask the same question. You helped them with the same question last week. And after they ask the question, they just keep talking and talking and talking. So, you know, what do you do? Well, you know, this can be incredibly frustrating for sure. The question is, you know, what are the best ways to handle it? So, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, these different scenarios. And, you know, one of the first things that we thought about as a group is, you know, a good rule of thumb when identifying unproductive interactions. I mean, some you're going to know right off the bat. But if you're not sure, or especially where it's going, you can ask yourself, you know, am I able to help this customer? Are they asking coherent questions, things that I'm able to really, you know, look into for them? Are these questions that we can ethically answer? You know, evaluating the type of interaction you're having with the customer is the first step. Another thing to look out for is if you provide an answer, you know, to the customer's questions, you know, how do they respond? Are they satisfied with that answer and then they move on to something else? Or do they continue talking because maybe they're really just looking for a conversation and they're not, there's really nothing you could do that would resolve anything for them to step away from the desk. So if the customer is continually asking questions that, you know, your previous answers, you know, don't resolve, you should definitely consider that to be, if it's not already unproductive, it's becoming that way. So good customer service representatives recognize that by reading the customer, whether they're looking for information or just, you know, somebody to talk to. You know, we never want to turn a patron away. You don't want to make somebody feel like, you know, whatever it is that they're there to get from us, that we're indifferent to that. But it's okay for us to set limits. In fact, we really need to set limits. And one thing that we do here at Main Library, one very effective measure that we have implemented actually in our entire system is it's the 3 questions, 3 calls, 3 questions per call, 3 calls per day rule. Excuse me, I was saying that a little weird. So many branches in our system have experience working with customers who call repeatedly throughout the day, and some of them ask the same questions over and over again, or the same type of question over and over again. So our 3 questions per call, 3 calls per day rule is very effective in allowing us to provide a service to the customer because they're requesting that. But it also allows us to limit their ability to monopolize staff time. You know, once we realize that a customer is becoming kind of like a frequent caller, and that those calls fit the definition of what we deem to be an unproductive interaction, we just clearly state to them, you know, to make sure that we're being fair to all our patrons or all our customers, we're going to answer 3 calls per person a day and 3 questions per call. And after that, you're welcome to call back tomorrow, or you can contact another library location. And most of them are pretty receptive to that. You know, while we're at the desk, we'll write their name down and keep sort of a running tally of how many times they've called, so that as staff rotate in or rotate through as we're covering service points, we're all aware of what's been happening. You know, once these customers reach their 4th call, it really is okay to refuse to answer the question and to refuse to answer the question and to remind them of the rule. Most times they're pretty receptive, like I said, to this, but we may have to remind them, and we shouldn't feel uncomfortable about that. Another scenario is if you have a customer at the desk that's at the desk, I guess also on the fence monopolizing your time, or your coworker's time if you notice that, and the interaction is unproductive and it's not going anywhere. that's when you should have a plan in place. So this happens with a few customers in particular at our library. They don't seem to pick up on normal social cues, like if a staff member is not really engaging with them in the conversation or is completely unresponsive, when they're talking to them at the desk. They just keep talking and talking and talking, and they just don't pick up on the fact that there's no back and forth going on. So again, we recommend having a plan to allow the staff member to politely leave the conversation. What we do here at Maine is one of us, sometimes, maybe it's the person you're on the desk with, will kind of sneak off into the back and call the desk. And that way, the only person that's at the desk is the person who's kind of been cornered, and they're forced to answer the phone. And that kind of breaks that interaction. Just a couple weeks ago, Erin, we had a gentleman who was camped out at the desk, and poor Kate was just getting, she's trying to work and trying to be polite. And this guy he is nonstop talking to her. And so Erin Skype messaged me and said, hey, can you call and try to rescue Kate? So we try to work as a team to recognize when these scenarios are happening and do our best to rescue one another. Have any of you guys had experiences like that, or do you have plans that battle plans, so to speak, that you try to use to save each other at the desk? Well,
I'm sure everyone goes through this.
It's uncomfortable because nobody wants.
Ooh, yes, Marissa.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, and we don't want to be rude. But sometimes, just bluntly saying, Kate, what was it you were talking about earlier? You worded it so well. I'm, saying to somebody, I really, appreciate you talking with me, but, I really need to get back to work so that I don't get in trouble with my boss. So it kind of.
Oh, yeah. It was, after you do the smile and nod thing for a couple of minutes, just say something like, is there anything else I can help you with? If not, I really need to get back to work so that I don't get in trouble with my boss.
Right.
Because everyone knows what it's like to have some sort of supervisor. And so they're going to say, oh, no, I don't want to get you in trouble, because they want to keep on coming back. That's the reason that they're talking to you. Absolutely.
Unproductive interactions can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share that my boss actually did this really, really well last week. A regular customer came up to the desk and exactly did this scenario, asked the same question that this person has asked like every day for the last year. And he told the customer, like, we have answered this question for you every day for the last year. We have given you this resource. We've given you these phone numbers. We've helped you with this. There's nothing else we can do for you. I think that you need to try somewhere else or have a new question, and then we can help you again. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
And glad that it wasn't me.
All right.
Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this is the angry customer. A customer calls asking for contact info for the North Carolina State Attorney General. And as you begin to look, they get angry, saying, why isn't this easily available? What's going on? Why are you taking so long? How do you respond to that? So this can be a tricky interaction too. Here at Maine Library, for some staff, when a customer becomes aggressive, that aggressiveness can become a distraction and can fluster us while we try to find an answer to the question. This scenario is actually based on an actual customer who calls our location regularly. He is incredibly demanding, and he's really very vocal about his irritation. He also has a clear preference for male staff members over female staff members, and he has commented in the past that the men who help him are the ones who get him the correct information that he needs the fastest. It doesn't matter if one of the female staff members answers his question the exact same way with the exact same information. He will accept the male staff member's response over the female every time. So how do you deal with a customer like this? The first thing I would say, and this, yeah, the first thing I would say is to be aware of how you're feeling at the time. If you're having an off day or your patience is thinner, it might be smart to ask a coworker to kind of step in with you. I know that kind of sounds like passing the buck, but it's really not, because if you feel like you can't deliver calm and efficient service, because sometimes people get under our skin and that aggression can really distract us, and that's okay because we're totally human. I think in a case where you recognize, today's not my day. Today's just not the day for me to deal with this customer. It's actually probably professionally sound for you to call and ask for help. We all have days like that. And I think it's good teamwork for us to work together to help each other out when we have those moments. But for this customer in particular, our department has kind of, several of us are doing this now, where when we talk with him, sorry, can't talk today. We repeat his question back to him to make sure that we understand it thoroughly, and also to ask clarifying questions, but also so that he hears that we understand what he's asking for, and that we're all on the same page. And then we tell him, we're going to place you on a quick hold while we research your question. And this is actually really effective because whoever is helping him is not subjected to the constant, bombardment of negative feedback or the berating that he just, when he's constantly saying things like, why can't you find this? Why can't you tell me what Donald Trump's, personal cell phone number is, or whatever it is that he's asking for, having them on hold, kind of protects us from that. Now, sometimes despite our best efforts to not engage and, or to not, to reduce the negative and aggressive behavior, sometimes we're unsuccessful. And he continues to abuse staff. And I mean, the word abuse is really true, because in this type of situation where it's escalated, it really is abuse, because, at this point we're lucky at Main Library because we've been empowered by our manager to calmly state that his behavior is not acceptable. And while we are more than happy to assist him, he is going to need to calm down, or we're going to discontinue the interaction. Sometimes this works, but sometimes it doesn't. There have been times we've had to stop the interaction and just say, you're going to have to call back tomorrow. We recommend, whether you've had this kind of interaction with a customer or not, maybe to have a plan for your department for addressing it. I think that makes staff feel more secure in understanding like when it's okay for them to speak up or to completely cut off the interaction. Because, I work with some really, really lovely, nice people, and they're very kind, and they have a hard time. I mean, I've worked with one person in particular. She is so nice, and I've heard people talk to her in a way that I'm like, that's really not okay. And so giving someone who maybe has a little more trouble drawing that line, showing them where the line is, and then empowering them to observe it, I think can be a pretty powerful thing in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I mean,
okay.
I think, each one of these situations with angry customers are unique because it's on. I mean, I think it's important to practice empathy. If somebody's upset because, they can't access their money and they, they're kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I need you to help me get into my bank account, but they can't remember their password or their email, and they have the wrong telephone number associated with their email. I mean, that person's angry, but you kind of understand why. I mean, I think it's different from example to example, but still, once it escalates to a certain point, it's like, I understand and I respect that you're upset, but we're gonna have to take it down a notch, kind of thing.
Yep. Okay, so we have one more of our pre-planned challenging scenarios, and this one's really quick and easy. It can be one of the most frustrating ones, and that's question burnout. You're working at a busy service desk, the phone rings, and the 15th customer or like the 80th customer in an hour asks if you can help them do their taxes. So like, what do you do in that situation? I feel that there's really only two ways to get through this situation. And the first one is to have a script So just be prepared. You know you're going to be asked this question. And if I could ask everyone to mute their microphones for just a second, because I hear an echo. So having a script set. So at Main Library in the springtime, we offer tax assistance and say, volunteers are going to be in the building to assist with taxes on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 till 7. This week's slots are already full, so call this number back on Monday morning, and then we will open our weekly sign-up sheet and then offer them another option or another library. But just be prepared with that script. You know you're going to be asked the same question. Just prep yourself. And then more importantly, patience. Be aware, self-awareness again. It might be the 15th time you've answered the question in 15 minutes, but it's likely the first time that the patron has ever asked this question. So a good key is to answer every single question like it's the first time you've ever been asked it. All right, so now we're going to move on to some of your questions that we received.
Okay, I will try to email her, hopefully.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of questions that we received from you guys before the webinar. So we're going to try to run through them real quickly so that we have time to also take questions from you afterwards. So the first question is, how do you handle customers who are on their cell phone while asking for your help? Tiffany, did you want to go through this? Because I have things I could say about this as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask any of my coworkers, people on their cell phones is like one of my biggest pet peeves. So for me, I have to practice self-awareness that when somebody walks up to the desk on their phone, I don't have the "you've got to be kidding me" look on my face, because it's just like, my mom is one of those people, so I have to constantly tell her, put the phone down, somebody's trying to help you. But sometimes, the call is important. Let's be honest. Sometimes the person comes to the desk, whoever's on the other line may be part of your interaction with the customer. For example, it could be a spouse or a child, and they're sort of like an added customer. And I think we can use our discretion in that case just to kind of see how it goes. In that particular situation, I would try to help as long as it was within reason. But if the interaction gets too complicated, I might suggest that the other customer needs to come in and be present for us to continue helping them. Now, assuming the customer is just on the phone, this is definitely something I feel like is reasonable to address. I mean, there are lots and lots of businesses that have signs up that basically say, we're not going to try to, you're not going to be able to receive services if you're on the phone. Now, of course, that would be something that would have to be approved by your manager or administration in order for you guys to enforce that. We don't have any signs like that up here. But outside of that signage, there are ways to handle a customer like this. And while I don't do it every time, sometimes somebody comes up and they're apologizing and they're whispering and they're trying to get off the phone. But for the person that comes up to the desk and is not apologetic and they're talking to their friend and they're like kind of waving their library card at you or whatever, I really don't have any problem, nicely, of course, because I think how we address these interactions with customers, even if we say something that's very unpleasant to them, if we say it in a nice way that's not aggressive, they tend to be more receptive to it. So, I've said things like, what, I'm happy to help you when you're done with your call. We have an area right over here where you can have some privacy, and you can go ahead and finish your call, and I'll be right over here when you're done. And a lot of times that works. And that's usually my go-to first approach. Erin, what were you going to say as far as what your approach to that is?
Exactly the same thing. I just say, I will help you when you're finished with your call. I'm obviously very polite about it, but I'm really, I'm stern about it. I make sure that they know that I'm not going to help them until they're off of their phone, if they are in that situation where they're being rude or somewhat dismissive. It's just a matter of self-respect, and yeah.
Well, I think it's about setting boundaries too.
Exactly.
Joiner Library said that they had somebody that they asked to step away from the desk to finish their phone call, and the patron said, "Yeah, right." Continued to talk. I mean, that's
no. Yeah, I am not okay with that, and that's where I say, well, if if you're going to be like that, then you don't need to be in the library right now. So I think my coworkers would say I'm probably one of the most bubbly, cheerful people that we have at the desk. But at the same time, we do not get walked over. Yeah, staff need to be respected as much as we try to provide excellent service. Yep.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I think it's reasonable for us to say, I understand that you're on the phone, but this is about, us being respectful of one another. And, I'm not taking phone calls and helping customers while I'm trying to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So, when your focus can be over here, then I'm happy to help answer your question.
Yep.
Okay, and I just want to jump in and share what I mentioned earlier. One of the managers here a couple years ago shared something that he always said to customers when he was trying to help them and they needed a lot of help and they expected library staff to do it for them. He would always say something like, I can help you as much as you help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a situation mostly with job seekers. And he described like people would be leaning back with their arms folded, expecting him to like type their resume. And so he would say that to, help them realize that they needed to start typing, start working, and then he would be able to help them more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have about 5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go through the questions or maybe open up for more questions?
I would like to talk about the sleeping, but yeah,
Okay.
if all participants would unmute their mics and please tell us what you're interested in talking about now. This is the question and answer session, part of
Sorry,
this session.
a short spot. Yeah. Well, while you guys are thinking about that, jump in if you have a question and I'll stop talking. But, we were looking through some of the other questions, like we said, that you guys had sent in. And Kate mentioned sleeping in the library. And we were talking about that this morning. That kind of boils down to what your library policy is, and is it being enforced? For this one, the solution I think comes with a candid conversation. Somebody needs to make a decision like whether or not it's allowed. And then once that decision is made, then staff can communicate or can with one another, and then they can consistently enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
If management's not making that call, it kind of can muck things up for us because, we here at our library, we have multiple floors. So, sleeping can be policed very differently from one department to another, for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's helpful to get everybody on the same page. But, sleeping really is only a problem if it's not allowed. So I guess you have to decide. We don't let people sleep on the floor here at Main Library. And at one point we had people, they could sleep, but they had to sleep like sitting up, like straight up in their chair. Now I think it's okay for them to put their head down. Does anybody else have a problem with sleeping in your branch that's become like a real issue?
So going along with what you said, as long as somebody, for me personally, if somebody isn't disrupting the rest of the group and they're not being a distraction, I will generally let it slide. I'm not going to let someone sleep for an entire hour, but if somebody, dozes off for 5 minutes, but I have no problem going over to a patron if they're snoring or making noise and just say, I'm so sorry, you can't do that here in the library. And if I have to wake them up twice, at that point I say, you're going to need to go and take a walk, wake up, walk around the block, and then you can come back into the library. And from that point on, I've never had a problem, but I in the next case, I would escalate that. I would send that over to our security department, or if your library doesn't have security, to management. And that goes along with what Tiffany said about consistency, just making sure that it's always taken care of in the same way.
Well, and I think, in some public libraries it become, well, I guess academic too. We've had an issue where we've had patrons not be well.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had their head down. And so we do try to check on them to make sure that they are okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody's been in the same position for quite a while, we probably want to go over and make sure that they're all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is, we're always checking in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Man, there's so much we could make this a 3-hour session. I don't think anyone wants that except for me. So I guess if nobody has any other questions, I mean, you're always free to email us. So today we're going to start wrapping this up. So today we covered just the definition of customer service and a couple just general customer service standards. Tiffany went into in depth about self-awareness and how it affects your customer service. And I cannot emphasize how important that is. So I really encourage you to take a look at that handout and go over some of the resources that she's offered you guys to look at, because that can really change your entire attitude about how you interact with other people. And then we went over a few challenging customer interactions. It's very fluid. If any of you have any other tips, please feel free to send an email on the next slide that Kate's going to bring up. She has her contact information. Yeah, so Kate, why don't you close us out?
Okay, great. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Erin and Tiffany. That was really a great presentation. This is actually an expanded version from our reference training that we're doing for all library staff, and it is incredibly helpful to review and also to just kind of generally talk with other staff about how we handle customer service in situations. We are taking a break from webinars during the library conference season. We'll be coming back in January of 2020. There's a little outline of what the public library section of SELA is planning. We're also interested in doing a library resume help session. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I'm looking for someone who would be willing to offer their resume for that. So if you're interested, please email me. Are there any questions?
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really love this topic, so feel free to reach out to us anytime if you have any other questions.
Okay, I have one other announcement / offer. We have library kittens. So if anyone is interested in adopting a kitten, these kittens were born at our Mint Hill Library probably about a week or two ago. We just found them yesterday. This is how I got my cat. So if you would like a kitten, we have them.
I'm eyeing that black and white one, that little white foot sticking out there.
I know.
Yeah.
Only if we can name it Dewey.
Oh gosh. Okay, so thank you all for coming today. I hope that you got something useful out of this. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me anytime. I'll get the recording of this webinar edited and posted probably in about 5 days. I'm going to try really hard to get it posted before my flight next Thursday. Great. Are there any last comments? Okay, great. Thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks.
Have a good day.